I just like to, smoke a joint every now and then.
Good people don't smoke marijuana.
You dick!
Welcome to VoteProPot-Cast, brought to you by VoteProPot.com.
I was thinking the other day that I think the Doobie Brothers is one of the greatest names of any rock band out there.
Really? Why is that?
It's just a great name. The Doobie Brothers. I mean, this is an urban myth, and I'm starting it because I just made it up. But you can tell everyone, just start telling everyone, when the Doobie Brothers came up with the name the Doobie Brothers, they were getting stoned, but they were doing bong hits.
Ironic. I like it.
Bong hits when they came up with the name of the Doobie Brothers.
Well, hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that little tidbit. Welcome to episode 14 of VoteProPot-Cast. We are really thrilled, frankly, that we've gotten this far with it. And we got a lot of stuff to cover today. 1 week until the midterm elections as we record.
But this is probably not going to air until the day of election day. Is when this is going to
until election day. So it's going to be pretty much too late to do anything about it. I'll tell you what. If one of us invents a time machine, we promise to come back to this time and tell you exactly how the election came out. But until then, get out and vote pro-pot. I'm Phil Adams.
I'm Jay Britton.
And I'm Andrew McCready's.
And we have a bunch of items to fill you in on today, including some new approvals for medical marijuana as treatment for autism and for brain cancer. A new poll showing 2/3 of American voters now approve legalization for adult use. A follow-up on a story we talked about a couple weeks ago on the banning of cannabis gummies in Washington state, and much, much more. But we'll start with some policy news out of Washington, D.C. that may be, a little disturbing. What do you think, Jay?
The one guy we all love to hate, Jeff Sessions. This is an article titled "Defying Congress, Jeff Sessions Keeps Blocking Medical Marijuana Research." I got this from wphealth.cc. 2 years after accepting applications, the DEA has yet to grant licenses to growers. It's been almost 2 years since the Drug Enforcement Administration began accepting applications for new growers of research cannabis, and 24 applicants are still in regulatory limbo. Since the DEA announced in August of 2016 that it would end the federal monopoly on producing cannabis for scientific research in the United States, growers, investors, researchers, applicants, and even members of Congress have sought to understand why a relatively simple licensing review process has stretched out for nearly 2 years.
Why has it?
The answer is pretty straightforward. Attorney Jeff Sessions, for reasons he has not publicly disclosed, has decided to intervene in a process that has historically not involved the Attorney General in order to stop the DEA from issuing licenses to growers. While the control
Does he really need to disclose the reasons, though? I mean, we know what the reasons.
While the Controlled Substance Act gives the Attorney General regulatory authority over scheduled drugs, that authority has historically been delegated to the DEA, which is part of the Justice Department. The DEA has two whole divisions, in fact, dedicated to investigating the diversion of controlled pharmaceuticals and listed chemicals from legitimate sources while ensuring that adequate and uninterrupted supply for legitimate medical, commercial, and scientific needs. So, once again, it falls back on Jeff Sessions. Orrin Hatch and Kamala Harris, as well as a few others, wrote a joint letter asking him to explain why this is the case. The article's long, and I don't.
And I'm sure he read the letter thoroughly.
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
And gave it his due consideration before filing it.
Once again, we talk about this administration and the signals it sends. Jeff Sessions seems to be the thorn in reform side, if you ask me, or anyone else, and he's got to go.
Well, I think that's true. And in my mind, part of the reason I consider myself a conservative is the idea that the government should not be placing itself in the position of being our caretakers or our guardians. He's doing this because he feels he has the ability and the desire to single-handedly protect America from the evils of cannabis.
Right.
I bet you, Now, it's one thing when he says, this is the law, I'm going to uphold the law. That's his job. I get that. But this kind of thing is not upholding the law. This is obstructing.
Absolutely, it's obstructing.
And I agree with you, Jay. I think the guy has to go. I don't know how Donald Trump feels about Jeff Sessions, except for, yes, I do.
Yeah, I think we all do, yeah.
I have a feeling we're, one midterm election away from him getting the boot.
I think so.
I hope so.
So who's going to take his place?
I don't know. Who?
Didn't you say Trey Gowdy?
A few. Well, he comes to mind. Yeah, I've since heard, since people are kind of bandying his name about, that he is making noises like he's not interested. But who knows? People say things and then they take the job. So
he's already taken the job.
Well, no, he's been mentioned as a possible replacement.
Well, he's been on record as being pro-reform.
Okay, I did not know that. I'm glad to hear that.
I did not know that either.
Pro-reform.
Well, to go a little deeper into this, a lot of folks are saying, well, what difference does it make what Sessions thinks or the DEA? It's legal now in Colorado and other states. Let's just buy some and test it. Well, it's not that simple because it's a Schedule I drug. Therefore, it is a federal offense to test it unless the cannabis comes directly from the government. Researchers who want to test cannabis products in humans must comply with federal regulations governing the handling of Schedule I controlled substances. Those regulations require researchers who would like to use domestically produced marijuana to obtain their material from a federally licensed grower. So there's the problem. As soon as you go out to, Oregon or Washington or Denver and buy some weed to test, it's a felony.
Well, you can't take it across state lines.
You can't use it for research, for scientific research. Period.
And you can't take it across.
Oh, is that
unless it's because it's Schedule I? So
that's part of what being Schedule I is. You can't.
Yeah, exactly. And
we're talking about research, right?
Yes, we're talking about research.
So they don't do major research in every state.
No.
That's why I think Maryland is poised to be a great place to grow medical marijuana for research because they have HEW, NIH, Johns Hopkins.
It doesn't matter.
Walter Reed.
As long as it's a Schedule I, it doesn't matter. If you're doing research and you didn't get it from Mississippi from the government's farm, it's a federal offense.
There's another option, and this is what Israel did, which I think just makes a lot of sense. You want to do cannabis research. The government has tons of marijuana. They have tons of it that they've confiscated.
Yeah, but we're talking about the law. There's.
Yeah, but but just because something is the law doesn't necessarily mean that the Attorney General's hands are tied. The Justice Department and the administrations of every administration make decisions about which laws they're going to enforce and which laws they're not so much going to enforce. They're not changing the laws. Congress has to do that. They're changing policy. And the policy is we're going to go after you or we're not going to go after you.
Yeah,
we're going to allow this to happen or we're not going to allow this to happen.
And this is a little bit different because the way I see it, Congress has passed a law saying we're going to expand marijuana research. And by the way we're going to do that, we're going to accept applications from people to grow it for us so that we can distribute to the correct
research
facilities. And Sessions is blocking that. So it's not that he's not enforcing something. He's literally blocking it from happening.
He's intervening.
He's intervening and stepping in, and he doesn't have the right to do that. Congress has passed
Well, I guess
the law.
he's got nothing more important to do. There's a whole lot going on, and we really want to get your feedback on all of this, and we want to hear from you. So please do check us out at VoteProPot.com.
Or send us an email at VoteProPot@gmail.com.
And please like and follow us on Facebook at Facebook.com/VoteProPot.
So, Andrew, why? Tell us real quick why, again, getting something other than the government sanctioned weed for research is so important.
Well, the thing is, there's thousands of strains. And what's happened is they've taken strains from Afghanistan and from Argentina or Colombia, and they've bred them together. So we have all these hybrids. So every year more hybrids, more strains appear. Now, we find that different strains affect different medical conditions differently. Because there's over 100 compounds, not just THC and CBDs, but the list goes on and on. And so we need to find the right strains to treat specific ailments.
And this is the kind of thing that researchers want to know.
Right.
And
that's why they need to get their hands on as many different strains as possible. That's why going to the police impound, lockers, and then instead of burning all that weed, give it to the scientists and let them study it.
Well, it's great, but again, it takes an act of Congress, and here we have an act of Congress, and it's bipartisan, and they've spoken and said we need more research. There's plenty of anecdotal evidence that this stuff actually works, and the law's been passed, and Jeff Sessions on his own is blocking that law.
Rhode Island approves medical marijuana for autism treatment. The Rhode Island Department of Health approved medical marijuana to treat autism. Now, the health department received requests from parents who had children who had not only autism but epilepsy, I believe, as well. And they're trying to get the health department to act on that. And it looks like that now they're going to be able to get cannabis concentrates to treat autism. In Colorado, the governor, who I'll get to in my next story, just blocked medical marijuana available for autism, which doesn't really make any sense. So what really in Colorado, what that does is like anyone with autism over 21 can go out and buy it for themselves. But if you're under 21, a minor, and you want to get a doctor's note saying, we want to treat this kid with cannabis, you can't do that, because the governor just blocked it.
Well, as you guys know, autism is very close to me. I have a lot in my family. My sister's a director of TEACH, which is a very well-known autism organization out of North Carolina. So I'm very familiar with autism. And
you have a nephew.
I would love to see some research on that. That would be great. And again,
what the story said was there's this one kid who kept on banging his head against the wall, kept on smashing his head. Mm-hmm. And they did. You give him helmets, you watch him, but you just, I guess, whenever you turn your back for a second, this kid did it. So the parents started treating the kid with cannabis, and he stopped banging his head.
Huh.
And so that parent went to the government, went to the Rhode Island Department of Health and requested it, and they said, sure, let's go for it. So
interesting. Well, I think what I find frustrating in the general sense is all these anecdotal stories of, which is essentially a holistic treatment is cannabis, and there's no research, so it's all just, hey, let's try this on that. Let's try. Boy, I'd love to see some literature, some research on the results.
Well, there has been research.
Has there?
There's been plenty of research. Now, most of the research done in the United States has been research to find the negatives. They're not looking for the benefits. They're looking for the negatives. But outside the United States, in Australia and in Israel and in many countries and England, they're doing full-fledged scientific studies.
Yeah.
And a lot of that research has been sort of kept from the public. But it's leaking out, and more people going, wait a minute, there is scientific studies that says it's not a gateway drug. There is scientific studies that says it doesn't cause lung cancer. There are scientific studies that prove that it doesn't lower sperm count or whatever. Whatever. Right. A lot of the arguments have been.
I've got an article here. FDA approves cannabis for brain cancer treatment. It is a pretty exciting article because Insys Therapeutics announced that the United States Food and Drug Administration has granted orphan drug designation to its proprietary cannabidiol product for the treatment of glioma. It's a type of tumor in the brain. So with this, if you guys are familiar with orphan drug designation or ODD, it basically, the FDA allows a drug manufacturer to use a drug on human trials. To be granted orphan drug designation, the pharmaceutical must generally be intended to treat a disease that affects less than 200,000 people, although there are exceptions. Companies can apply for ODD through the FDA application. Part of this application includes a discussion of the scientific rationale for why the drug could benefit the intended disease. Acceptable evidence includes in vitro studies, preclinical animal testing, and any relevant human experience. So in order for them to have been granted this, there has to be some pretty significant evidence that that it works or has shown positive results. So that's huge. I mean, to me, that is huge. And with brain cancer, of all things, I would think that this would fall under the recent Right to Try Act that Trump pushed and signed into law last May, where if you are a terminal patient and there are experimental, as yet unapproved drugs that you and your physicians feel you could benefit from, you've got the right to do it, even though they haven't been FDA approved. You have the right to try. The wrap up here is the fact that the FDA has granted ODD to a CBD product for treating glioma is remarkably important. It means the United States government believes the scientific evidence is strong enough to justify directly treating brain cancer in humans with CBD. So that's a huge step, I think. I mean, when you've got the federal government making this kind of a ruling, it's huge. This would not have happened 5 years ago. It's an admission, I guess. It's that's right. That's a good way of looking at it.
They're conceding something that they've resisted since we were young.
Yeah. Well, it's also kind of bullshit because the United States government took a patent out in 1972 to use cannabis to shrink tumors. So they've known about this for decades. They even have a patent on it. Now, they've proven that, there's been many studies that show that cannabis can be used to shrink tumors. There was a 9-month-old baby, whose parents were told, take the baby home, make him comfortable, because that's all we can do. Inoperable, There's no drugs we can give him. So they did the cannabis oil treatment. And this is a 9-month-old kid. There's no psychosomatic thing. This kid doesn't know what's going on. And within 2 months, the tumors started shrinking, and 9 months later, it was gone.
And that's something.
That's amazing. Yeah,
if that even just that one case,
I'm with you, Andy.
Doesn't motivate someone to say, we got to study this shit starting yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw a great episode of Weedakit. Have you ever watched that on Vice? Last night about children who have leukemia, and these parents have, they've been through chemo, and it's so sad to watch these little 4, 5, 6-year-old children, going through chemo, and these kids, some of the parents stopped doing chemo and started giving them cannabis treatments, and it's working on several kids. Again, it's anecdotal. Studies need to be done, but I mean, it's enlightening and it's very encouraging. And God, we need to get this thing off Schedule 1 and do some research.
Right, because we don't know what strain they were all getting. We don't know how the oil was extracted.
Right, exactly. We don't.
There's studies that say, and a lot of people say, this cannabis has the exact same THC CBD ratio, and this one does, and they're both sativas or whatever. But we respond differently.
There was a young woman on the show. I'm going to say she's probably 17, and she quit her chemo and went full time with this. And she's taken ungodly doses. I mean, she was doing like 100 milligrams 4 times a day of THC with some CBD, and she had leukemia, and she's in remission. I mean, it's fascinating. Again, it's, I'm skeptical. I'm a person by nature.
She must have been high as shit.
Oh, my God. But she wasn't. I mean, they were interviewing her. I guess it's a tolerance thing, and you get used to it. But
that's why the juicing is so great, because it's not
Right.
the THC is not decarboxylated, so it's non-psychotropic.
Well, yeah. So you can take high
So you
doses
can take
of it,
600
I guess.
milligrams of THC, and then it doesn't affect you one bit at all.
and one of the
But you
things
get
that
all the medical benefits from it.
one of the things you see a lot more often now is folks who are on chemo, who decide to stay on chemo. I mean, cannabis is an excellent drug to take while you're on chemo. I mean, it solves so many of the...
Well, that's what Andrew said. There isn't a better anti-nausea drug.
Right. Not only
out
the
there.
nausea, but the exhaustion and the sick feeling.
Loss of appetite.
All of that. It seems to work incredibly well for that. So anyway, we get back to that research, man. Get it off Schedule 1.
So here's some interesting facts. 10 years ago, only 40% of voters claimed to support cannabis legalization. That was 2008. By 2011, how high do you think it went?
Wow. No idea.
50%.
50%. Exactly. It rose from 40% to 50%. How high is it now in 2018?
Are we talking about medical, Phil, or are we talking about
I'm talking about legalizing adult use of marijuana.
Adult use. Okay.
40% in 2008, 50% in 2011. How much in 2018?
I think we're at 60-some now, aren't we?
Well, we all know it's 66%.
Yeah.
That's correct. It's 66%.
Wow.
2/3, 2 to 1. Gallup poll finds the U.S. favors cannabis legalization by 2 to 1. Now, this is, as the article says, it's often hard to envision massive, super fast changes in social attitudes, but they do happen.
Why do you think that is, Phil? I mean, why? I mean, think about it. We've been at the same place in terms of acceptance for 50 years. Why in the last 10?
I have a theory. Well, for 2 reasons. One, medical marijuana is becoming more and more acceptable.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So people are going, maybe, okay, there's something to this here. And the other thing is all the people that are really opposed to it, the reefer madness
crowd
generation are dying off.
Well, that's true. And I think you're right about that.
Well, I do think that there is generational change in this, and it reaches a tipping point, kind of. I think both of the things you said, Andrew, are correct. And I think there's just more information, more and better information out about it now. I think in the age of the internet, people are able to look this stuff up a lot more easily than they could. It's information. And really, that's why we're here. Is to get some of that information from where it resides to where it ought to be in people's minds.
Right. So NORML and Marijuana Policy Project and us.
I think that you have to give credit to some of these organizations who are out front and have been pushing this hard for the last 20 years, like NORML and Marijuana Policy Project and those. They've done
right, and it's been an uphill climb for many years, I'm sure. But they get to a point where like I say, a tipping point where things begin to go either one way or the other, and they're starting to go the other.
I went to a Marijuana Policy Project seminar, and afterwards they had a little meeting with the director of the Marijuana Policy Project, about 12 of us in there. And he was saying years ago, you would go to a cocktail party and say, yeah, I work full time, trying to change marijuana laws. And so many people would start giving you, the gateway thing, that's bullshit. That'll never happen, never happen. Because that was 20 years ago. Because now I go to cocktail parties and say, I work to reform marijuana laws. He goes, and I feel like the prettiest girl at the dance.
That's interesting, yeah.
Because everybody slapped me on the back.
Definitely been a change in attitude.
Here's what the article says about that very thing. While such shifts appear to happen quickly, like the swift decreases in tobacco use and drunk driving rates, that's not really the case. They happen very, very slowly and then all at once. Activists founded the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws 48 years ago, when only about 12% of Americans favored legalizations.
Wow.
Most of them lived in San Francisco, I'm sure. Seeing change as a sudden phenomenon ignores decades of work. It's like the old overnight sensation. This is a guy who's worked 20 years to become an overnight sensation. And it's the same dynamic here. It happens very, very slowly and then all at once.
This is a court story, so having to do with marijuana that could have a huge impact on the United States cannabis industry. The headline is, there is a marijuana smell lawsuit that could impact the entire cannabis industry. Phyllis Wendy Hope Riley and Michael P. Riley filed a lawsuit with the help of anti-marijuana group Safe Streets Alliance, claiming that a legal marijuana grow operation run by Alternative Holistic Healing in Colorado has lowered their property values and led to less customers at their horseback riding business because of the strong cannabis smell that comes from the grow facility. The Rileys also said that the fact that the business is illegal at the federal level is also hurting them because they're sad and their neighbors are criminals. So it sounds like a joke. It sounds like, oh, come on, this is bullshit. This ain't gonna happen. But the problem is, the lawsuit may seem silly and ridiculous, but the U.S. Court of Appeals in the 10th Circuit didn't think so. In fact, the court mentioned the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, which is RICO, of course.
The RICO Act.
A law that was made to go after organized criminal organizations like the mafia, in their ruling that the lawsuit could continue. So essentially the court said that even though the business is legal in the state level, it's still illegal at the federal level, and therefore an argument can be made that they're engaging in racketeering. Now, the reason this is scary is because it's in federal court in Denver. And if they should, these Rileys should win this court case, it could have a huge impact.
They will not be the prettiest girls at the dance.
That's right. Obviously, a court ruling that a legal cannabis business could be considered racketeering at the federal level is very bad news for the cannabis industry.
What does that have to do with the smell? Which is the issue, right?
Okay, that's the reason they filed the suit. They say, well, this is impacting our business because of the smell. People won't come to our business next door because they, complain about it. But on the much higher level, it's a federal court. So if they should win this case, the Rileys, then, especially with the RICO Act involved, then it has all kinds of, it sets a precedent and has all kinds of issues for other court cases that could be, for example, if you're in Colorado and a federal court case is ruled upon negatively towards cannabis, it could have a lot of implications. I mean, some of these alliances like this one who are very anti-cannabis could start filing all kinds of federal law cases, and it could be a clusterfuck for everybody involved.
Right, just based on the way that the law is written and how it's been interpreted in the past.
Well, based on Schedule 1, based on the fact that federally it's fucking illegal. So, at some point, this whole thing is going to come to a head in a federal court, and it's got to, unless the law changes. Because,
and this is just one more tentacle
exactly
that's out there
right.
that's going to reach the court. I mean, it's just one thing after another. Frankly, I hope this does make it to a higher court.
Well, it'll force the issue, won't it, Phil? I mean,
it will force the issue one way or the other.
It's got to come down to states' rights.
Yeah, but it's more than that. But you're right. It does come down to states' rights, but it still comes down to, we're a nation of laws. And the laws...
Yeah, and states' rights is one way of saying that the federal government does not need to be the nanny state. I mean, that's kind of the principle behind this as I see it, at least for me.
And I agree with you completely.
They don't get to be our caretakers and do things that are, because they're not good for us. And we talked about that in a previous,
but they
episode.
do it every day, Phil. They do it every day. And this is, I see this, if they don't change Schedule 1, they don't change the law, at some point this is going to get to the Supreme Court. I don't know what the case would be. It could be something as stupid and asinine as this. But at some point it's going to get to the Supreme Court if they don't change the law first. And God, who knows what could happen. It'll be interesting.
It will be interesting.
It's just an example of prosecutors and politicians using a law and twisting it and spinning it to apply to someone who really isn't breaking that law. They're not out there, conspiracy.
No, they're just pursuing another end.
Right. They're just going, we can use this law to go after them, even though it really has nothing to do with what they're doing.
It's
I mean, what does this have to do with racketeering? I don't even. That's the part of the article. I mean, I didn't.
They're state licensed businesses. Where's the racketeering?
Yeah, I agree.
Well, that's why I hope it goes to a higher court, to the Supreme Court, because I don't know. I think it's ridiculous. Someone's got to see through this at some point.
Well, the good news is it's a federal court, but it's a federal court in Denver, and likely this is going to get tossed. Let's hope so. But at this stage, the Court of Appeals has already accepted the case, so it's going to happen. I mean, it's already there.
Yeah, it's moving on up the ladder. Here's some more good news.
We need some good news, Phil.
Remember a couple of weeks ago you did a report, Jay, of that is the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board was prohibiting gummies.
Yeah, what the fuck?
They were pulling gummies off the shelf.
I love my gummies, man.
Starting next year. Right. Well, according to an article from Leafly, the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board, affectionately known as the WSLCB, prohibited infused cannabis. They're reversing course.
I love it. Good news. You're right.
It was going to be in effect starting in 2019 anyway. Mm-hmm. They are pulling back on that. Will it actually save the cannabis-infused treats? That's still up in the air. According to the article, under a revised plan announced by regulators, the cannabis industry will have 30 days to bring forward alternatives for the agency to consider. How long has that been going on?
Yeah, no kidding. That's great news. I mean, especially for
it's good news, but it's like, all right, we'll let you do it again.
God.
It's been going on for years, bringing alternatives forward to the agency.
Right.
That's why they got to have the gummies on their shelves in the first place.
Well, it's good news especially for the manufacturers, because those poor people, had already created all this product, had been accepted. They met all the regulations, all the requirements for labeling and all that shit, and it was accepted, and it's on the shelves, and they went, we changed our mind. They changed their mind because they have concerns, quote, that the products meet the definition of especially appealing to children. End quote. Well, we discussed that before. That's the
so we talked about that. But so they're going to back off on this, give the cannabis industry a reprieve. Okay. And what this sounds like to me, and Andrew, tell me what you think. They've heard kind of footsteps behind them, and this is based on politics. This cannabis board is getting an earful. And they've reconsidered, we're going to give it another 30 days. And guess what's going to happen in 30 days? They're going to be back on the shelf. What do you think?
Well, it's another example of people who are opposed to cannabis reform just doing whatever they can. They don't have a good argument. They don't have a lot of ammunition. So they're just throwing out whatever they can just to slow down the process, hoping something sticks.
I would respectfully disagree, because I don't think that's who this is, Andrew. I think these are bureaucrats. These are regulators. Most of them are probably fine with cannabis, but they're sticking their frickin' fingers in the pie and trying to overregulate And, again, I don't think, I mean, this is.
So, Jay, you see this as a little bit of CYA on the regulators' part?
Probably.
Because they're afraid what happens if one of these if a kid gets a hold of a gummy, ends up in the hospital, we're going to get hollered at,
Well, in fairness, I read an article yesterday about a child, a very young child, under a year old, an infant, who got hold of some gummies, and this child's in a coma. So, yeah, it's a scary thing, but it has nothing to do with the adult, 21 years old, the only person that can get into a dispensary to buy something. That goes to the home. I mean, when you buy that stuff, you take it home and you keep it away from your kids, for God's sakes, Think of it like a loaded gun.
Well, how many teenagers a year die of alcohol poisoning from stealing liquor from their parents' liquor cabinet?
Far too many.
The bottom line is, it gets back to Phil's point that it's the nanny state thing, because there are millions of products in our homes that are dangerous to children. You can't frickin' outlaw them all. You've got to put some responsibility.
Well, guns are legal.
Well, okay.
I mean, if you can take a gun home, what about a gummy?
Right. I mean, millions of people, cars are legal. Millions of people die in car accidents every year, and a lot of them are children. But hundreds of millions of people, use cars responsibly and safely, and so why can't the same thing be true of gummies? I think you're right. It's very much the nanny state.
But if we're held responsible to keep guns out of the hands of and alcohol and tobacco out of the hands of our children after we buy it, why can't we be responsible to keep gummies out? Edibles?
Great point.
Exactly.
It's the exact same thing.
Exact same thing. Same concept.
You keep your gummies with your gun in the safe.
It's not even a packaging issue, because I have purchased gummies in Colorado and other places. It's a brown paper bag, brown Ziploc type bag. It's not shaped like a bear or a donkey or something. It's just a gummy. Right. It's not shaped
but the regulation wasn't directed at the packaging either.
No, that's right. Exactly.
It was directed at the substance.
So what are you going to do? Take all the edibles off the market? Because they're all attractive to children. I mean, whether it's a cookie or a brownie or whatever the hell it is. I mean, kids are
if they do that, then everyone's going to make them at home, and God knows what they're going to be all kinds of potencies.
Right.
There'd be cookies there that could level Andre the Giant.
Yeah.
It needs to be treated like any other pharmaceutical. You go to the frickin' pharmacy, you pick up your blood pressure medicine, you take it home, and you keep it away from your frickin' kids. It's not that complicated, really,
Yeah. But there's another issue. Like, I know, Jay, you have children. I mean, you got to keep those gummy.
They're adults.
Oh, no, you have two children. Yeah. Well, but that's my point.
Yeah,
you got to keep your cannabis.
I got to hide them from my grown-up kids. Yeah.
Right. Or else you got to steal his.
That's another story.
You got to keep it out of the hands of your kids. Okay, I have a really important story here once my computer refreshes. This is the Ultimate Stoner's Guide to Convenience Store Munchies.
Sweet. All right.
I think we all, realize that, when you get stoned, you get certain munchies, but there's a trend that a lot of people apparently like going to convenience stores, or in my case, gas stations. And apparently the grand mecca is 7-Eleven. So here's a list of, they said, the best munchies. One is that you get at 7-Eleven, apparently. One is the Nestle Toll House ice cream cookie sandwich, which sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it does sound good.
Can't go wrong.
Yeah, okay.
You had me at ice cream.
Okay, the crown jewel, they say, is a 7-Eleven's hot food section, the Buffalo Chicken Roller. Yeah, they have that roller grill thing, with the hot dogs.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't eat anything off of that.
I've been there for a decade. Yeah,
that sounds scary to me, but whatever.
The Old Faithful is cheddar cheese and sour cream ruffle potato chips.
Ugh.
Not bad.
Nah.
Not bad.
Now, here's one of my faves, and that's Bugles.
Love Bugles, yeah.
Who hasn't gotten stoned and put Bugles on their fingertips and
right, and eat them off one at a time.
Warlock hands. Look, I got Warlock jazz hands. Ooh,
yeah. Now it's been a long time since I've had a real case of the munchies, but I recall those chocolate Hostess cupcakes doing a trick.
Well, okay, let me get to it. They're on the list.
Oh really?
Awesome.
Yeah. But the Bugles, I take a Bugle and then the canned cheese.
Yeah.
And you fill up the Bugle like it's a little ice cream cone. With
cheese whiz?
Very little ice cream.
Oh yeah, man, that was great.
Oh, that
the
sounds
ultimate
good.
candy bar they say is a Snickers bar, obviously.
Yep, love a Snickers.
And then they said, one of the ultimate classics is the Hostess chocolate cupcake with the white icing swirls on top. Across the top.
You nailed it, Phil. You nailed it.
That's the shit, man.
Yeah, man.
That's the shit right there.
Just remember when Twinkies, when Hostess went out of business, and then someone else bought them up, but for a while there, you couldn't get Twinkies or any kind of Hostess products, and
that sucked.
people were selling cases of Twinkies for hundreds of dollars on YouTube,
on eBay. Yeah.
Okay, another one is corn nuts. Those are good. You got to admit that. And Haagen-Dazs ice cream. I like the salty and sweet. I would put the corn nuts in the ice cream. Personally.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, in coffee ice cream.
Yeah, that's what. Matter of fact,
That'd
the article
kill it.
actually specifies coffee ice cream. Yeah.
Oh, Haagen-Dazs coffee ice cream is the best ice cream, in my opinion.
Delicious.
The other one that's I never got into these, but I guess they're like gummies. Is Sour Patch Kids.
We're too old for that shit. I think. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're just a variation of the sweet tart.
Yeah.
But,
chewy sweet tart.
It's a gummy.
Chewy, like the sweet tart and the gummy had a baby, and it was a Sour Patch Kid.
Now the next one I definitely can relate to, and that's the Marie Callender's mini chicken pot pies.
Oh man,
this is great. And how many times you made one of those?
Yeah, but the problem is I can't wait that long for them to cook. Man, they take forever.
I know, no, to cool off.
Cool.
You cook it.
Yeah, they cool
That's
off.
I like burned my mouth shut one time. The other one is a York peppermint patty, and they say you put it in the freezer. Now, I think my theory is like when you're stoned, you sort of appreciate flavors. Sort of goes, wow, man, I've never noticed that.
Yeah, definitely.
And the chocolate and the mint together is just such a unique,
It's like
cool
perfect.
combination.
It's like heaven, heaven.
Now, another one they said is very popular amongst stoners is Arizona iced tea, because you can get a 32-gallon can for 99 cents.
32-gallon?
Well,
30.
No, you get a tall boy for 99 cents.
I think you mean ounces.
A tall boy.
A 55-gallon drum for 99 cents. That's a lot of iced tea, man.
And the last one would be like chocolate milk or Yoo-hoo. Was it Yoo-hoo?
Yeah,
Ooh. Well, that's not milk. It's just chocolate drink. It's good though.
It's like chocolate milk with like 300 grams of sugar in it. It's delicious.
Yeah.
I haven't had that in like 50 years.
When I get the munchies, my favorite. I mean, maybe because I'm a pastry chef, I'm always going towards really cool pastries, and so I love donuts. Is like one of my favorite munchies of all time, which I think was left off the list, which is, I'm sorry, but that's number one.
Krispy
Well, what
Kreme.
kind of donuts? You talking about your donut shop donuts or your Hostess donut gems?
No, I want a yeast raised donut. No, yeast raised. Something that's like a pillow, like Krispy Kreme.
Krispy Kreme, man. When the light's on in the shop and they're warm, fucking A.
Oh, yeah. Little pillows of sugar, man. They're great. And so that and pie too. I love pie. So Phil, Jay, what are your favorite munchies?
Phil?
Well, I like, I love the Peppermint Patty's little sisters, the Junior Mints.
Oh, those are good. Yeah.
They're some of my favorites, man.
I think of Seinfeld.
Yeah. They're very refreshing.
For me, it's got to be a Payday candy bar, man.
Ooh.
I like those.
A Payday and a fruit punch.
Oh man, yeah.
I'm heading to 7-Eleven when this show's done, guys. You got me going. I'm hungry.
Man.
Yeah, me too.
Man, I've eaten a couple thousand 7-Eleven chili dogs, man, with a plastic liquid cheese, and just put about 50 jalapenos on there.
Oh, yeah, that'll do you in, though. I spend the next day inside when I do that. But nowadays at my age, but there was a day, 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 chili dogs with jalapenos. Mm-hmm.
I never trusted that microwave food from. I had a hamburger once from 7-Eleven, a microwave hamburger, and it was if you thought hamburger, it was terrible. But if you closed your eyes and pretended you were eating a hot dog, it wasn't so bad.
But I thought one of the ultimate is it's also like Doritos, man. I can eat like a bag of Doritos.
Fucking A, Doritos, definitely. All right.
Pringles.
We could do this all night.
Anyone listening to this, please, in the comment section below, leave us a little note of what some of your favorite munchies are. What are your go-to munchies? And if you have any cool recipes, or like you can open up like a small bag of Fritos and put chili and cheese and whatever else, jalapenos, right in the bag, man, and just eat it right out of the bag with a fork. It's awesome.
Vote Pro Pot needs your help. A lot of things we want to accomplish or want to help others accomplish. And getting the word out and informing people, that's our mission. And it really helps us when we can reach more people. And that's where you come in. Leave us a comment. Go to the description, show description on VoteProPot-Cast. And at the very bottom, you can leave a comment. Hopefully something we can, use and build upon. Or go to iTunes or Apple Podcast and give us a rating. Go down to the customer reviews, and you can give us as much as 5-star rating, and you can leave a comment there as well. And the more you do that, the more we get heard, and the more we get the word out. So as usual, folks, we thank you for making us a part of your day. And we hope that you've laughed a little bit. I hope you've learned quite a bit. We really urge you to get involved, stay in touch. Check us out at VoteProPot.com.
And please send us an email at VoteProPot@gmail.com.
And please like and follow us on Facebook at Facebook.com/VoteProPot.
And as usual, you need to get involved, get registered, get to the voting booth, and vote pro pot.
Wish I was up in Vancouver at the Cannabis Cafe, smoking good old Sensimilla at the beginning of the day. But here I am in New York City, hiding out in Central Park, getting kidnapped by the police today sometime before dark. But I wish I was up in Vancouver at the Cannabis Cafe, smoking good old Sensimilla at the beginning of the day. The judge looked down upon me, frowned. He said, "Kid, get on your way. Just don't start out your morning with espresso and a J." I said, "I wish I was up in Vancouver at the Cannabis Cafe, smoking good old Sensimilla at the beginning of the day." Hitched on out to Portland, caught a ride up to BC, took the bus over to the neighborhood to have a bowl with my coffee. Now I'm up in Vancouver at the Cannabis Cafe, smoking good old Sensimilla at the beginning of the day. Smoking good old Sensimilla at the beginning of the day.